for someone like me who kind of just wants to keep plowing ahead and not taking, stopping and standing still and sort of smelling the roses, is to really just give yourself time, to reflect on what you've actually done, and just being proud of yourself, really. And
Mm.
I think that can have a profound effect on your mental health as an entrepreneur.
Mm. Welcome to The Silent Epidemic by Omniotherapy. I'm your host, Hatice Mehmet-Quirk. Today we're joined by Matthew Kitchen, the co-founder of Vinny, a bespoke workspace retail solution fueled with purpose. By championing brave and visionary brands, Vinny has created a colourful and functional platform offering canteens, mood-elevating gifting and eye-catching vending machines. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. Let's begin by exploring your journey. What led you to co-found Vinny?
Sure. So, good question. So, I would say what led us to founding Vinny was, as a freelance graphic designer, I spent a lot of time in co-working spaces and hot desking around London, and I think it was kind of from just a typical frustrated founder's story where we felt the front of house offerings we had amongst these spaces just wasn't really inspiring us when it came to on the go snacking, functional products, and just kind of general spotlighting of emerging brands. So what we wanted to do was create a platform that championed these colorful, vibrant brands that I always say in the workspace ecosystem.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it was almost your experience of being in and around workspaces where you realised there was so much more out there that just wasn't being offered.
Absolutely. So I'd say that was probably the gap or niche we found. Coming from a design background, we felt that there was this gap for great emerging brands that had a function or some kind of way that they would spark joy in someone's day to have a platform to the masses or across workspaces. I think it was just you're in these workspaces and there's nothing either healthy or inspiring to grab on the go. So
Yeah.
what we wanted to do is to create that platform and route to market.
And I like that, that the mood elevating, especially because I've always said this, we're at work more than we are at home. It can get quite mundane. Despite how much we love our work, the same old, same view, the same snacks, the
Yes.
same, it gets boring,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah.
So it sounds like you wanted to break that boredom by offering the different options out there,
Yes.
but also boost people's morale at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think apart from things that we felt looked great in our vending machines and the vending machines themselves being these really vibrant, colorful vehicles for these brands, it was more just that we felt that, like you said, you're at work so much and we're kind of facing this idea of burnout so often that I think the ability to take that water cooler moment during the day around something as simple as a cool vending machine was something that we felt could be something quite transformational in workspaces. And I think post-COVID, when we sort of pivoted the business, it was also apparent that the kind of new way we work from home and at the office, this hybrid model, there was another space for us to kind of integrate ourselves with the gifting and kind of allowing or championing or empowering businesses to really show their staff that they see them and hear them and appreciate them. So I think that was kind of one of the most important things for us, was really giving space for businesses to appreciate their teams.
But also, we've had boxes before, and they're lovely because you sort of see the boxes and you automatically you do smile. But what I liked most about the boxes were I'm gluten and dairy intolerant. And normally you get a hamper and we go for it. And it's like, can't eat that, can't eat that, can't have that, can't have that. And most of it just gets given away.
Yeah.
But with the boxes, I could literally go through it and I'm like, oh, that sounds, oh, that tape.
Yeah.
And it was opening my eyes to the
Yeah.
different snacks that were
Yeah.
available as
Yeah.
someone who's gluten and dairy intolerant.
Absolutely. You know, the irony of it all is that, you know, when we said we wanted to create these initially snack boxes only before we kind of did the wellness side of things, was
Mm,
it was this approach to plant-based, and plant-based was kind of emerging at the time 4 years ago, becoming bigger and bigger. And it was quite remarkable being able to convince staunch meat eaters or people who
mm,
hadn't tried these great fun snacks before to kind of, you know, try something a bit different. And also, again, from a dietary requirement point of view, something that's plant-based is applicable to everyone.
mm,
Everyone can have it. So whereas if you put something like, you know, biltong or beef jerky and someone doesn't eat
mm.
meat, or someone's gluten-free, it's we've kind of like turned over all those stones to be able to, you know, satisfy everyone's needs.
Yeah, no, for that it is, they are wonderful, because for the first time ever I felt included
Yeah.
when a gift box would
Yeah.
arrive like that.
Yeah.
So that's great. Just a quick break from today's episode. If you've ever tried to get therapy, you know how frustrating it can be. You're finally ready to talk to someone, but you've been stuck on a waiting list for months. That's not how mental health support should work. Omnia Therapy makes getting help simple. You can book a session with a fully qualified professional in just 24 hours. No waiting, no contracts, just real support when you need it. And at £40 per session is actually affordable. If you're struggling, don't wait. Tap the link in the show notes or head to omniahealthgroup.com to book your session today. You and your co founder, Isla,
Mhm.
had a eureka moment during a trip to the south of France,
Mhm.
which led to the inception of Vinny.
Mhm.
Can you share more about that experience and how it shaped your business vision?
Yeah, sure. So, kind of off the back of what I mentioned earlier, in terms of the kind of lack of inspiration in workspaces, it was an isolated moment, which was pretty simple, in a really small airport in the south of France. And there was nothing but horrible looking vending machines and people plowing their money into these things. And I just thought to myself, you know, there's something here in terms of the convenience of it, which we all know the vending machine is not exactly the most, you know, innovative invention that's been around for decades. But I'd never seen something that was design led, or something that had a bit more of a personality to it.
Mhm.
So that moment itself was kind of that eureka moment, saying, well, look, if we flip this on its head and said, okay, well, let's get these designed out from a kind of brand experience point of view and into workspaces, then surely there should be something there from a convenience, but also, you know, a design-led approach, or just a kind of um, inspiring search for something different during the day. You know,
Mm,
so I think it was also the fact that I tend to try and be as healthy as possible, and I hadn't really seen this idea of a healthier for you concept, and we
mm,
wanted to have something healthy but also something that was inviting and personal.
mm. Nice. Vinny emphasizes purpose driven and mood elevating products. How do you select the brands and products that align with your
Yeah,
vision?
great question. So this has been is a constant process for us. So I mean, whether we're talking home fragrance, lifestyle, print, we have four categories of values in the company. So we have mental health, sustainability, wellness, and so as long as we can kind of at least tick two to three of those pillars
Mm,
off during our kind of onboarding process, they will eventually come into our curations or catalogs or machines.
mm,
So I mean, it's very much, you know, product onboarding is very much driven by our own personal values.
mm,
So it also kind of allows us to quality control what we're bringing in, and also um, we also, as I said earlier, what vibrancy is one of the things we kind of tend to kind of harp on about a lot. So if the brand feels vibrant and impactful, that's kind of another way we bring them on. Yeah.
nice. Integrating retail solutions into workspaces is a unique approach. How does Vinny enhance workplace culture and employee well-being?
Yeah, good question. So the way we do this from the vending machine point of view is kind of what then led us to the gifting side of things. So what we do is we empower businesses to create genuine and lasting impressions on not only their teams, but also their prospects, customers, and members within the
Mm,
spaces. So I think with what we do, those kind of colorful moments or moments of joy that they have when they receive these things are something that we champion businesses to use as a tool to empower their staff.
mm,
So those products that we have curated in the boxes have some sort of purpose themselves. So I think in terms of being able to kind of not only treat someone to something when they're not feeling so great, it's also the products themselves inside that we also seek out in terms of function. So
mm,
whether that's like well-being toolkits or things that can soothe someone with neurodiversity and things like that.
mm,
So we feel that that experience that we give workplaces is something that boosts the culture of inclusion and also being able to, you know, get everyone on the same page.
mm. It's quite uncommon for a business to go down that route of concentrating on well-being,
Hmm.
having an understanding that neurodiverse needs can also be met
Yeah,
alongside the norm
yeah,
as such,
yeah,
and it doesn't have to be a big hoo-ha,
yeah,
does it?
yeah.
Um, and that's quite rare.
Hmm.
Do you feel that workplaces have enough of an understanding of what they can do to support their
Um,
employees' well-being?
I think we're in, it's a great question. I think not entirely yet. I
Mm,
think we're moving the wheels in the right direction. And I think it is up to not only the organizations to kind of look into that, and how there are initiatives out there, whether externally sourced or setting up people teams in-house to be able to do
mm,
those. So
mm,
I think for us, more so than just the products themselves, it's kind of just about sparking the conversation about inclusion and people who have neurodiversity,
mm,
you know, close to them, and I think there's a long way to go, but there are businesses out there who are focusing more and more on that, and I mean, it comes down to things as simple as a wellness day a week to have to allow someone to just take that time off to prevent that burnout,
mm,
but then something as broad as some of our customers, workspace customers, physically designing the workspaces to be more neurodiverse friendly,
mm,
so kind of helping soothe the experience of being at work. And I like what you said earlier, people are at work so often now that if there isn't that particular attention on those things at work, you're going to have a difficult time retaining teams. So I
mm,
think more so now, people are looking for that. Employees want that and expect that from organizations, but I don't think it's quite where it needs to be yet.
mm. It's funny that you say that actually, because I was speaking to someone, younger generation, or
Hmm.
younger than me anyway, and they said that when they go for a job, they don't fret about asking questions to make sure that their needs are being met,
Mm-hmm.
and they almost interview
Yeah,
the person that's interviewing them,
yeah,
because people are becoming aware that, well,
mm,
if I'm going to be at work 9 to
yeah,
5 Monday to Friday,
yeah,
it has to suit me as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
And I think that that does make a difference to
Mm-hmm.
how someone manages their mental health,
Mm,
and again
mm, mm.
avoids burnout.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think this is something we've seen more and more with organizations we work with. And I think there's initiatives kind of popping up, slowly but surely, where it is a real conversation now. Whereas I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, we
Mm,
wouldn't talk about it. It was a taboo subject to say, look, I suffer from anxiety, or
mm,
I'm autistic, or something like
mm,
that. And I think um, it's actually well within the right of the employee or potential employee to ask these kind of questions and push back, because
mm,
I think I saw something quite nice the other day. It's kind of pushing forward in the age of pushback. And I think
mm,
right now it's like it's kind of empowering teams to say that no, we expect more because we're giving you our everything. So
mm,
that's kind of what we see more and more, and what we try and champion too.
mm. And again, as you said, like years ago, it was almost fashionable to hit burnout
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
it was you had
Yeah.
to go full
Yeah.
pelt, you had to be burning the
Yeah.
candle at both
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah.
And actually now there is more of an awareness of
Mm.
you can still work to the best of your
Yeah.
ability, but you don't have to kill yourself in the
Yeah,
process.
absolutely. No, I agree, and I think, like you said, burning the candle at both ends. It's one of those things where it can be difficult to kind of just step back and take time out sometimes. And
Mm,
I think now that we're so hyper connected in the age
mm,
of social media and things
mm,
like that, I think that's another important aspect to the conversation is being able to comfortably switch off and say, you know what, I've put a good shift in today, but I don't feel so good right now, and I need to just, take a step back and,
mm,
and revisit this, and I think I kind of have that in my mind also from working again in the design world before, where you are sort of pushed to your limit with creating mock-ups and kind
mm,
of like so many different variations of something you've been working on, and you almost feel like you can't disconnect. And I think it's kind of you know somewhat ironic post COVID, where we had to be connected all the time now, and I think it's still taking time for us to find that balance of connection and disconnection.
mm.
And I think we're getting there, but I think it's also important for organizations to realize that you can't be calling on people 24/7.
Just a quick break from today's episode. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention: mental health at work. If you run a business, you've probably seen it: stress, burnout, employees who aren't performing at their best because they're struggling. The problem? Most companies don't know how to address mental health in a way that actually helps their team. That's where Omnia Corporate Training comes in. We provide CPD certified mental health training that's practical, flexible, and designed to fit into any workplace. If you want to invest in your team's well-being, and let's be real, happy employees perform better, tap the link in the show notes or visit omniahealthgroup.com to learn more. So, you're a business owner.
Yeah.
We're living in this fast-paced world.
Hmm.
You're under pressure.
Hmm.
You're working and running your own business.
Hmm.
How do you manage your mental health?
So that's a good question. I've also battled with the last couple of years
Mm,
because I mean, as you know, when you're running your own business, you feel like you can't switch off. And I think in the first couple of years, it was difficult to,
mm,
especially during the pandemic when we were really trying to get it off the
mm,
ground, and it's kind of, hitting moments of burnout and disconnect and being overwhelmed with things. And I think now for me, number one is fitness. That's one
mm,
of the main things that I focus on. And just practicing mindfulness and being present and trying to not constantly worry about what's potentially going to come, is really just being in the moment and just soaking in and celebrating those small wins.
In terms of mindfulness,
Mm.
what exercises do you
So
practice?
I practice meditation every
Mm,
morning.
okay,
So I do that, between workouts.
nice.
And then I think I've been trying to lend my hand a little bit more to journaling and gratitude and things
Mm,
like that, but I need to do that more, I think.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a funny one, journaling, because obviously
yeah,
with the work that I do, it comes up a lot, and I
yeah,
encourage a lot of people to do it. And a lot of people say to me, "But how?
yeah,
What do I write about?"
yeah,
And to some people, I say, if you don't want to write chunks and
yeah,
chunks,
yeah,
do bullet
yeah,
points.
yeah,
If you want to start by looking at, well, what are you grateful for?
mm,
Because we've all got something to
yeah,
be grateful for, and it's a
yeah,
great way to keep us grounded,
yeah,
but also use it as a reflective point. What did I do today that I
yeah,
could do differently tomorrow? What
exactly.
did I like about today? What didn't I like about today? Use those points
Yeah.
for that reflection, because that's where the growth comes.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. And speaking of journaling, as we've worked a lot across the kind of print world in the last couple of
Mm,
years with the products we provide, and we've come in contact with some great brands that also
mm,
encourage that kind of approach to mindfulness and journaling. And those, I think having those tools in your back pocket in
mm,
this day and age will help you prevent that inevitable burnout you might feel, especially
mm,
if you're a freelancer, business owner, or fractionally working for multiple organizations. It can overwhelm you. And I think it
Mm.
is important. And I think journaling is one of those really simple things that has such a big impact.
Yeah, yeah. Because as you said, if you're juggling so many balls
Mm,
and you're under pressure, because if you don't deliver, who's going to deliver,
yeah,
right? The business is effectively you.
yeah,
But then if you're juggling and you're not clear in your mind,
mm,
how can you make safe and informed decisions for the business?
yeah, yeah,
Whereas that journaling, as you say, such a simple
yeah,
tool, grounds
mm,
and almost gives clarity on how to move
yeah,
forward.
yeah. And I think, generally speaking, it is for the masses, the simplicity of things is important now, and to educate people
Mm,
on the simple tasks in a
mm,
day that can really have that lasting impact. And I think with what we do, and when it comes to gifting, it's more than just what you receive, but also that something so small can have such a big impact on your
mm.
kind of collective well-being and collective well-being of your organization too.
Yeah. And within your boxes, as you said, you do, there are, you get journals
Yeah,
and etc.
yeah,
So sending someone a gift that makes them happy because you're thought of and they're
mm,
considered.
mm,
And then it's got the tool
yeah,
within the box
yeah,
that says, take a moment.
yeah,
So even if that person's been playing with the idea,
yeah,
all of a sudden the journal's there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you take that step away from them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the kind of the way we deliver it, metaphorically speaking, is that
Mm.
it's kind of this, you'll have a tool or toolkit within the
Yeah,
box
yeah.
that's kind of accompanied with other things. Because I think
Mm.
sometimes it can be difficult for people who aren't receptive to what we're saying, journaling, or kind of turn their noses up at, mental health toolkits and things like that.
Mm.
So what we're trying to do is just make it a normal conversation,
Mm.
an everyday conversation, and empowering these businesses to give their teams something that's going to have a lasting impression, so that they can look back in their week or their month or their year and say, that's still there. Maybe I should open this kind of like note card set of mindfulness or something like that. And
Mm.
I think now it's such a mainstream conversation, and there's so many great brands doing things for making a positive impact, that it's kind of a given that we should be continuing to have the conversation.
You'd say that, but I find it really frustrating that within schools there's still so little done
Mm, mm,
around it.
mm.
And I'll share this with you.
Yeah.
I've got a 7-year-old, and she said she went into school the other day, and one of her friends wasn't feeling very good. She said she felt quite stressed.
Mm,
And she said, I tried to help her, mummy. And she said, I told her what you told me. And I said, oh, like, what did you tell her? What's she going to say? She said, I just said to her, just take a moment to breathe.
mm, mm.
And she did some grounding tapping
Yeah.
exercises that I've done with my daughter before,
Yeah.
with her friend.
Yeah.
And I thought, how mad is it that you've got two 7-year-olds at
Mm,
school
mm.
and one is teaching the other
Yeah.
a grounding exercise
Yeah.
that she's only learnt from me because of the job that I
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
that it's not so mainstream within schools. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I didn't even really think about it from a kind of, from a base level,
Mm.
grassroots level,
Yeah,
should kind of
yeah.
be something that would be more spotlit, generally speaking, that importance, and how to carry those tools that could help a 7-year-old when they're having a
Mm.
rough time, which I think is far more common than maybe we think to believe.
Mm.
Yeah.
But even if they start doing it at 7 and it becomes natural to
Yeah.
them, so then when they're going through their teenage
Yeah.
years where the hormones go
Yes.
wild,
Yeah.
or then they're doing their exams or uni and they're away from home,
Yeah.
they're so used to doing it. So
Yeah.
it's a natural tool
Yeah.
that they just tap into.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of think about it from a parental level now too, thinking about like how a lot of parents kind of just overlook it, or no, it's just a phase or something like that. And that
Mm,
suppression is
mm,
something that could be quite detrimental later on in life. And I
mm,
think, where we're coming at it from like a corporate level and workspaces, it's like
mm.
maybe we kind of need to start thinking about it earlier on,
Yeah,
where we can
yeah.
try and figure out something or some kind of initiative within schools.
Mm. I think that'd be a
Yeah,
really good,
yeah,
because it does need. I think you do need. We need to go further,
yeah.
catch them when they're
Young,
younger, as such,
absolutely.
so it just becomes the norm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Because really, you're almost trying to educate people that understand it,
Yeah,
know about it, but because it's not been the norm for them,
yeah,
they're not really sure about it. They're still
yeah,
on the fence. They've got older generations that are almost telling them, That's a load of nonsense.
Yeah.
In my day, we
Yeah,
didn't do that. We
exactly.
just got on with it.
Yeah.
So they're torn, aren't they?
Yeah.
Where if you go to the younger lot
Yeah.
and educate to bring it through the world.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like a bottom up rather than top down
Mm,
approach.
mm.
Definitely.
Just a quick break from today's episode. Have you ever felt like the kind of support you need just doesn't exist? Maybe you need help outside of normal hours. Maybe you don't even know where to start. That's why Omnia Neurodiscovery exists. We offer specialized, flexible mental health support, including intensive evening and weekend packages for people who need something different. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, don't wait. Tap the link in the show notes or visit omniahealthgroup.com to find out how we can help. I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask you a question if you don't mind,
Please.
off the top of my head.
Sure.
Because you're working with your wife.
Yes. Yes.
So do you mind if we
No,
cover
please.
it?
No, do you know, I've actually had this question a couple of times
Right.
of what it's like. But
Yeah.
please go ahead.
So, as we've already explored, you started the business with your wife. So the question that comes to mind is, how do you manage working with someone, living with someone, being married to someone? How does that work for you?
I mean, it's a great question, and it's a kind of a topic of, I think, dynamics generally speaking, and I think we've in the beginning, I think when it was kind of high pressure, high stress, there were definitely a lot of headbutting moments, you know, where we thought, you know, maybe slightly differing ideas, or you know, uh, approaches to things, the way I deal with things, the way she deals with things. And I think what we've managed to do, especially because we're quite a small team, is that we've both found our lanes of where we fit. You know, I think that's the most important thing, is kind of allowing each other to thrive in the lanes we fit best in, you know. So obviously doing something like this is definitely my lane. For Isla, she's much more of a kind of behind the scenes person, a lot more creative, likes doing all the kind of nitty gritty, the admin, the, you know, keeping us prepared. And I think that the way we dealt with it was kind of just learning from each other, and that takes time, you know. I think it's a kind of natural progression of figuring each other out, and how we both work. I mean, sometimes we work better away from each other, but when it comes down to quite intense briefs, I think it's better when we kind of put two heads together. Yeah.
So then, sounds like you, as with anything, when you start it off, you've got to figure out what lane you're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you figured that out, but it also sounds like you need to be quite boundaried.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, I think so. I think for me is also it was the boundaries of not wanting to micromanage, because I think I'm quite a specific person and I like things done a specific way. She works slightly differently. So that boundary that we've given ourselves is like, I don't cross that when she's working on X project and vice versa. But I think it might be a me problem more than a her problem, to be honest. So I agree. I think it's also allowing ourselves to switch off at the end of the day has been one of the most important things, which I've been trying to really hone in on more and more, is being able to stop talking about work at some point, or else we could just be on this endless cycle.
That was going to be my next
Yeah.
question. How do you switch off in terms of, okay, so now we've worked, now we're going into being husband and wife.
Yeah.
Have you got any tips? Have you got any?
I would say tips would be honestly something as simple as just getting out on a walk together, kind of like having that boundary at the end of the day, saying 5:30, that's it, taking the dogs and getting out and just switching off. I think that would be the most important thing. Even if there's something sort of hanging in the air that needs to be done, is just switch off. Because I think when you start to obsess over things and try and kind of, you know, get things done when you've kind of run out of steam, that's kind of goes back to the burnout point, and then that can then start having an effect on the relationship. And it's not an easy thing to do by no means, but I think the more you do it and the more you figure yourselves out, the better your kind of business output will become eventually, you know.
It's such a simple thing though, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's having that awareness,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
what you're saying is, actually 5:30,
Yeah.
we get the dogs,
Yeah.
we go out for a walk.
Yeah.
That's almost like picking up that different hat and putting it on without physically putting on a different hat.
Yeah.
But that's the line in which you say, I'm moving from that position into this one.
Yeah.
a simple technique
Yeah.
whereby you're saying, okay, there may still be some things left over, and I dare say that you get
Yeah.
thoughts that come into your mind about, or you might even think, "Oh, I should ask about that question,"
Yeah.
or "I
Yeah.
wonder if she followed up on that." No, this isn't the
Y-
time now,
Yeah.
because you're noticing that you need that
Mm,
space.
mm,
Then you get the clarity.
yeah.
Because if you don't have the space and you don't have the clarity,
Yeah.
you then fall into that burnout
Yeah.
position,
Yeah.
and that's where irrational decisions can sometimes be made.
Absolutely, irrational decisions, arguments,
Mm,
things that can be avoided. And I love what you said about awareness, because Isla has been teaching me a lot more about self-awareness,
mm,
and kind of I've learned over the last couple of years to really kind of stop myself to say, okay, like, we don't need to do this right now. We
mm,
can wait until tomorrow. It can wait. I'm not saying that everything's more important than the business, but there are other important things in our lives. And I
mm.
think that's one of the key things we found, is that kind of awareness with each other.
But also, sometimes we get stuck in our heads and we convince ourselves that we have to fix that thing now.
Yeah.
When actually, it's probably the worst thing that we need to be doing
Yeah.
in that moment, because if we're het up,
Yeah.
if we're already stressed, if we've already got the burden of
Mm.
what is involved in making that decision,
Yeah.
chances are we're not going to make a very good decision, are we?
Yeah.
Step out of it,
Yeah.
get the space, come back to it when you're calm,
Yeah.
you'll make the decision far easier.
Yeah.
And I dare say it will be a far better decision.
And it always is.
Yeah.
It always is, and I like I mentioned earlier, when I used to freelance in the design world, it is the classic case of, you trying to push, 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 and then you kind of get to this point where you're staring at a piece of work and it's just not improving, or it's not doing what you need it to do. And then you realize that sort of night's sleep, or that 8 hours you get,
Mm,
or even just like taking an hour or two in the day and coming back to it, and going on a run or a walk or whatever, that's that important bit of headspace, I think. And I think that's another key point with working with a partner, is just allowing each other to have that headspace away from the business when you need it most.
I think that's a classic example. And again, because it's graphics, so it's
Mm,
design, it's quite
yeah.
visual. What it sounds like you're saying there is that you could be working on something and you're tweaking it, you're making the changes, you're tweaking it, you're making the change, but it's looking the same.
Yeah.
You're not seeing any difference.
Yeah.
You need to step out,
Yeah.
take that space.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you see all the changes.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
exactly. And I think that's also kind of the realm of which creativity thrives too. And I think,
mm,
a lot of times in business, especially in what we do and in selling to other businesses, is that idea of creativity in the B2B world. And I
mm,
think that's those moments of taking that step back are when when your best ideas kind of manifest
mm.
themselves, and that's something I kind of took away from my previous career, and kind of try to implement in this. And yeah.
Matthew, thank you for sharing your journey and insights with us. It's been enlightening to learn about Vinny's mission and how you're integrating purpose driven retail solutions into workspaces. Before we conclude, is there one final piece of advice or encouragement you'd like to offer our listeners, especially those navigating the challenges of entrepreneurship and mental well-being?
Great question. I would say one key takeaway for me, I think I mentioned it earlier, was celebrating the wins.
Mm,
Really taking the moment to kind of reflect on what you've done, and for someone like me who kind of just wants to keep plowing ahead and not taking, stopping and standing still and sort of smelling the roses, is to really just give yourself time, to reflect on what you've actually done, and just being proud of yourself, really. And
mm,
I think that can have a profound effect on your mental health as an entrepreneur.
mm. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to The Silent Epidemic. If Matthew's story has resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Stay with us for more thought provoking conversations on mental health and well-being in our upcoming episodes.